From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
Kamala, you're fired!
I say, bring it on.
If it's breaking news, we're live with the latest coverage. From the White House, the State Department, and Capitol Hill, we know the issues, but above all, we know the players to bring you the latest in-depth analysis on all the key stories that we're covering. I'm Eric Ham. Join me from Washington here on Firstpost America. Hello and welcome to Firstpost America. I'm Eric Ham, live in Washington, D.C., and over the next few minutes we'll take you from the United States and around the world, covering all the top stories of the day. But before that, here's a look at the latest headlines. The United States approves the sale of weapons to Israel worth $20 billion amid tensions with Iran. The package includes F-15 fighter jets, air-to-air missiles, and tactical vehicles and ammunition. Russia declares a state of emergency in Belgorod after Ukraine unleashes heavy artillery fire and drone strikes. Ukrainian forces continue to hold large swaths of Russian territory in Belgorod's neighboring Kursk region. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi to visit Ukraine and Poland next week to boost defense and economic ties with the European nations. This will be the first visit by an Indian Prime Minister to Warsaw in over 4 decades. Thailand's Constitutional Court removes the Prime Minister from office over an ethics violation. The court says the Prime Minister breached regulations by appointing a cabinet member with a criminal conviction. And New Zealand police find lethal amounts of meth in sweets distributed to children by a local charity in Auckland. At least 3 minors received treatment after eating the candies. Officials say up to 400 people received the tainted treats as part of a food donation drive. We begin in the United States. Democratic presidential nominee Kamala Harris will make her first policy-centered speech and roll out her economic agenda at an event in Raleigh, North Carolina this Friday. The vice president is expected to make rising inflation her #1 priority. She'll also outline a plan to lower costs for middle-class families and take on corporate price gouging. Now, inflation is one of the top issues of concern for voters this election cycle. In fact, a survey by the University of Michigan indicates more Americans actually trust Kamala Harris to handle the U.S. economy over her Republican rival, Donald Trump. Last week, Kamala Harris pledged to eliminate taxes on tips and raise the minimum wage, which until now has been her only economic policy proposal.
And it is my promise to everyone here, when I am president, we will continue our fight for working families of America. Including to raise the minimum wage and eliminate taxes on tips for service and hospitality workers.
Now, before Kamala Harris unveils her economic agenda, Donald Trump has promised to tear into the Biden administration's economic record on Wednesday. The former president will deliver a speech in Asheville, North Carolina. Their competing economic plans in different parts of the Tar Heel state illustrate the value and importance both campaigns place on the state. Democrats are hoping to turn North Carolina blue for the first time since 2008 when Barack Obama won there. Meanwhile, Kamala Harris's vice presidential pick Tim Walz held his first solo campaign event on Tuesday. He took on Donald Trump and his running mate J.D. Vance, saying they cannot relate to middle-class problems.
Can you simply picture Donald Trump working at a McDonald's trying to make a McFlurry or something? He knows us. He couldn't run that damn McFlurry machine if it cost him anything. So the only thing those two guys knows about working people is how to work to take advantage of them. That's what they know about it. Every single chance they've gotten, they've waged war on workers and their ability to collectively bargain to take that away from them. All we're asking for is better wages, better benefits, better lives, and dignity in the work that we do.
The Minnesota governor also hit back at Vance for accusing him of misrepresenting his military record and suggesting that Walz evaded deployment to the war in Iraq.
These guys are even attacking me for my record of service. And I just want to say, I'm proud to serve my country, and I always will be. I'm going to say it again as clearly as I can. I am damn proud of my service to this country. And I firmly believe you should never denigrate another person's service record.
Now, with less than 3 months left before voters head to the polls, all eyes will be on Vice President Harris as she lays out a vision for the economy in a state Democrats have not won in nearly 15 years. And moving to East Asia, Japan's Prime Minister Fumio Kishida is set to step down after announcing that he will not seek re-election in the coming month as party chief. This decision will also lead to a change in Japan's leadership because the ruling Liberal Democratic Party, which has governed almost uninterrupted since 1955, will have to pick another leader who will then become Japan's new prime minister. Speaking at a press conference in Tokyo, Prime Minister Kishida expressed that it was time for new leadership within the LDP and pledged full support to a successor.
The most obvious first step to show that the Liberal Democratic Party will change is for me to step aside. I will not run for the upcoming presidential election. I will continue to support the new leader who will be elected through the presidential election as a comrade.
Kishida assumed the role of party president back in September of 2021, winning a 3-year term and securing a general election victory shortly thereafter. However, his approval rating saw a sharp decline due to a major corruption scandal within this party. The scandal involved unreported political funds raised through the sale of tickets for party events, entangling more than 80 LDP lawmakers, many of whom were part of a party faction previously led by the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. In January, the scandal led to the indictment of 10 individuals, including senior lawmakers and their aides.
As the head of the organization, I have no hesitation in taking responsibility for a serious situation, the fundraising scandal, caused by the Liberal Democratic Party's member. This has been on my mind since the incident first occurred. Now that the diplomatic schedule for the time being has settled, I would like to make a clean break by stepping aside and moving on to support the presidential election.
Now, while some Japanese residents said it was a great decision, others expressed surprise at the Prime Minister's announcement.
I was surprised, but I think he felt he couldn't continue because of the scandals and being criticized for wasting tax money.
I hope the economy and people's lives will get better with the new Prime Minister. Also with what's going on in Ukraine and China. Someone that will strengthen our national defense is needed.
Now, Kishida's tenure marked a massive shift in Japan's defense policy, moving away from decades of strict pacifism, driven largely by concerns over China's growing assertiveness in the Asia-Pacific region. In April, Kishida visited the United States, where both nations announced a new era of cooperation. In July, Japan signed a defense pact with the Philippines, allowing for the deployment of troops on each other's territory. So as the LDP prepares for its leadership election, Japan watches closely to see who will step up to guide the nation forward. And moving to Latin America, El Salvador has secured its biggest private investment in the country's history with Turkey's Yilport Holdings announcing an investment of $1.6 billion. The Turkish investment will be used to expand 2 seaports in El Salvador. Salvadoran President Nayib Bukele said the investments were part of his broader economic revitalization plan. Now it must be noted that the Turkish company would be upgrading the ports in Acayolta and the upcoming Bitcoin city in La Union. In addition to refurbing the 2 ports, Turkey will also jointly operate both the ports with local authorities for the next 50 years. The Acayolta port is the largest and the most important harbor in all of El Salvador. In fact, it's responsible for most of the country's exports, including coffee, sugar, and balsamic salt. The first phase of investments would be to expand the port shipping lanes to reduce wait times for large vessels. The second and third phases would expand the port's parking facilities for ships. But now it's important to note the Bitcoin City port has not been operational since it was constructed back in 2008. However, Bukele hopes that the Turkish investments will make the port usable. Meanwhile, Ankara says it sees immense opportunities and growth potential in El Salvador's Bitcoin City. El Salvador under Bukele made Bitcoin a legal tender in 2021 when it announced that the president had grand plans to build an entire city based on the world's largest cryptocurrency. The Bitcoin City will have special tax advantages, crypto-friendly regulations, and incentives for doing business in Bitcoin. Bukele says this would bring in billions of dollars in investment and thousands of jobs to El Salvador.
El Salvador wants to trade with everyone. El Salvador wants everyone to come visit. El Salvador will open its doors wide for all the citizens of the world. We want them to come, visit us and know us. We want to be their friends, allies and partners.
Now, this is not the first time that Turkey and its Yilport Holding firm have invested heavily in the region. The Turkish firm already operates ports in Guatemala, Ecuador, and Peru, where the United States and China also have large investments, including major port deals. Now, it remains to be seen whether Turkey's gamble in El Salvador will in fact pay off, as market concerns about cryptocurrency continue to raise questions about the stability of Bitcoin and Bukele's crypto city. And moving to North America, a bombshell report by the United Nations has slammed Canada for being a breeding ground for modern-day slavery. The report says Canada's temporary foreign worker program favors employers and locks migrants into debt bondage. The Canadian scheme lets companies control the workers' housing, healthcare, and migration status, preventing them from seeking better-paying jobs in the country. Here's our report with more details about Canada's flawed migrant worker program.
The exploitative practice of slavery has been abolished across the world over the past 2 centuries. Still, the dehumanizing trade exists in one form or the other, ranging from forced labor to debt bondage to sex trafficking. And one of the many countries harboring this extreme form of oppression is Canada. United Nations investigator Tomoya Obokata has published explosive details about the discriminatory practices and deep power imbalances in Canada that favor companies and prevents employees from exercising their rights. Obokata claims Canada's reliance on temporary foreign workers is breeding ground for modern-day slavery. Canada has a program for non-Canadians that brings them to the country to work on a temporary basis. This was initially meant to fill labor shortages, but has grown dramatically over the years. The program is now under fire for suppressing wages and leaving workers vulnerable to abuse. To study this decades-old program closely, the UN Special Investigator toured Ottawa, Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, and Moncton. He found that employers across Canada heavily rely on workers from Mexico, Guatemala, and Jamaica. These workers mostly work in agriculture, fast food, healthcare, and construction sectors and are often locked in debt bondage. They borrow money to participate in the program and depend on their Canadian wages to repay accrued debts. The program also ties the work permits of these migrants to a specific employer, and that employer controls the workers' housing, healthcare and migration status. So if the workers are fired, they may be deported back to their home countries. This prevents them from seeking better paying jobs in Canada. Obokata's report further alleges that foreign workers experience a wide range of abuses in the country. This includes physical and emotional abuse, racism, hazardous work conditions, long hours, limited breaks, wage theft, and even sexual harassment. Meanwhile, the Canadian police failed to take these complaints seriously and reports these workers to immigration authorities rather than probing the matter. Canada's Immigration Minister Mark Miller has responded to this UN report, saying the worker program is not fatally flawed but needs to be reformed, although he called the slavery characterization inflammatory. Last year, Canada approved over 230,000 temporary foreign workers into the country, which was more than double that it hired in 2018. And now, with the United Nations recommending a permanent residence to these workers as the only way to avoid the contemporary forms of slavery, Canada has to take action to stop the abuse now.
And we close out in Antarctica. The continent known to be one of the coldest and most isolated places on Earth is experiencing an alarming and unprecedented heat wave. Temperatures have surged more than 50 degrees Fahrenheit above normal right in the middle of winter. In fact, this is the second major heat event in just 2 years, raising concerns about what the future might hold for the planet's polar regions. Could this be a sign of more extreme climate events to come? Our final report dives into the details.
In a place where the sun rarely shines and the temperatures are usually cold, East Antarctica has stunned scientists with an extraordinary heat wave. This strange and unprecedented heat wave is the second to hit East Antarctica in just 2 years. The last time it happened was in March 2022, when scientists working on the eastern coast experienced a day that almost felt summery. Shedding their heavy coats, donning shorts, and even going shirtless, something previously unthinkable in one of the coldest places on Earth. But this year's heat wave is happening in the middle of the Antarctic winter, making it all the more unusual. Normally, winter temperatures hover around minus 58 degrees Fahrenheit, which is minus 50 degrees Celsius. But now they're dancing around minus 4 degrees Fahrenheit or minus 20 degrees Celsius.
Although we are a long way from any inhabited part of the planet, in reality what happens in Antarctica affects the entire planet. The worrying thing is that it is accelerating. The feeling is that these things don't seem to matter to the world's population, who are immersed in their day-to-day lives, and so are we, but we don't think about the long-term consequences, and the problem is that these degradations are not easily recovered.
The heat wave isn't just a brief spell, it's expected to last another 10 days. The South Pole Station, a place known for its brutal cold, tracked its warmest July since 2002, with temperatures nearly at 11 degrees Fahrenheit or 6.3 degrees Celsius above the average.
The global mean temperature has reached a new record that has exceeded the record set by the record-breaking year of 2023. So a good part of Antarctica is much warmer than usual for this time of year. And so when you sum that up into the global average, this actually drives the average up.
The reasons behind this heat wave are complex, and scientists are still piecing together the puzzle. One of the main culprits seems to be something happening far above the Earth's surface in the stratosphere. Here, a strong band of cold air and low pressure, known as the polar vortex, usually spins around the pole, keeping the extreme cold locked in place. But this year, the vortex has been disturbed by atmospheric waves, causing it to weaken and allowing temperatures to rise dramatically. The bigger picture is also worrying. The entire planet has been experiencing record warmth since last July. And as the Earth heats up, the poles are warming even faster.
July this year, although it was the second warmest, it was slightly below July 2023. So the margin was very small. It's a few hundreds of a degree Celsius. I think that's really something to keep in mind. I think it was the streak record of global temperature record was in part related to development and of the El Nino event in the Pacific has come to an end, but there is also other part of the world that are still very warm, much warmer than average.
Recent data from ice cores and climate models also show that Antarctica is warming twice as fast as the global average, a trend that could have devastating consequences for the entire planet.
In a sense, over the last 12 months, we have been already above 1.5. It's a slightly different definition, so we don't expect to actually breach the terms of the Paris Agreement until the 2030s. But the more, with this warming that we have seen and that in all likelihood will continue in the next few months and years, well, we are approaching that limit. And so it becomes more and more urgent, if that's our goal, to limit the emission of greenhouse gases if we want to maintain the planet within that boundary.
As the heat wave continues to grip East Antarctica, scientists are watching closely, knowing that this is likely a sign of what's to come. In a world that's warming at an unprecedented rate, even the coldest places on Earth are feeling the heat.
That's our show for today. We certainly thank you so much for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you right back here again tomorrow. Thanks so much for watching. From impeachments to inaugurations, if it's a political story, we are on the scene. The race for the White House is heating up.
Kamala!